Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I have my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio, and we're going to start off with our foundational verse because it's important. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. For he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Powerful verse. We say it every program for the last 4 years. Because why?
Well, the psalmist does not begin with man's opinion or human government's authority. He begins with divine ownership. This is not a philosophical statement. It is a decree. The world does not belong to kings, governments, or corporations. It doesn't even belong to us, though we often live as if it does. The psalmist leaves no room for negotiations. The Lord's ownership is total and irrevocable. Ownership is not up for debate because it is rooted in creation. The Lord made the earth. He laid its foundation. He established its order. Therefore, he owns it and everything in it. Every mountain peak and every drop of ocean water, every law of gravity, every breath of air, each exists because God willed it to be. Creation itself is the signature of divine possession. And that's what I love about Psalm 24, 1 and 2.
Wow, that was really elegant. Way better than what I could say. Well, Alan, I'm excited about today's guest. She's brand new, never been on the show before. Her name is Michelle Bader Ebersole. She's an author, speaker, founder of Widow Goals. It's a nonprofit. She's also the host of a podcast, Widowed Too Soon. Now, the reason why we're bringing her in to talk to her is because, Alan, we're heading into the holiday season. And, you know, we can always forget how tough this season can be for some people. Some people feel alone. Some people have lost someone, and they're just grieving. And I thought it was really good to have Michelle on for her to tell us her story. Michelle, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to share about what God showed me through my journey. So, yeah, I can tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah,
so I was widowed May 23rd, 2020. My husband Luke had a battle with cancer, off and on for 17 years. He actually had his leg amputated when he was 26, right after we got married, and our whole world's changed. And he was never able to go back to work. He was always on disability and he was in a lot of pain, had a lot of issues over the years, pancreatitis, diabetes, all kinds of things. And the good news was the cancer was gone for 13 years, which we loved. In the meantime, we had 3 kids. And then one day he ended up getting a scan and they found some more tumors in his lungs, and it'd been gone for 13 years. So this time they told us it was terminal, and, to just start preparing for that. And, we did all the chemo, we started fighting it and doing everything and sitting the kids down. They knew all about their dad's cancer. We had talked to them about it. I had written a book about what we went through our first year. And so they already knew about it. And so sitting them down was very hard. They were about 9, 11, and 13 at that time. And we just started doing the chemo, doing all the things and, praying for a miracle. But I told my kids, we are praying for daddy's healing. It may be here and maybe in heaven. Of course, we want it here, but ultimately it's up to God. And so I didn't want to prepare them there were people who told me, no, you need to tell them he's going to be healed. And I'm like, I'm not going to set them up to hate God. He may be healed in heaven. And so we prayed that every day. And, unfortunately, none of the treatments worked. And we enjoyed, every last minute we had. It was COVID, but we see it as a time that we got so much more family time together. The 3 kids were all home from school. COVID, their school shut down in March. He died in May. And so we see it as a really precious time. We stayed up every night watching movies and hanging out together and just enjoying every single moment. And on May 23rd, he took his last breath with us surrounding him. And we played the song, I Can Only Imagine. And that's actually when he took his last breath. And God gave me this supernatural peace. That's the only way I can describe it, that I was not crying. I was just calm for my kids, and I was telling them to talk to him. And I was saying things to him like, "You're going to meet my grandparents today. That's so exciting. And you're going to hear, 'Well done, my good and faithful servant.'" And after he took his last breath and the kids said their goodbyes, that was when I lost it. My mom was in the room with me and his body, and we just cried. And there's nothing like it. You cannot explain to someone what it's like to see a soul leave the body of someone. And there's some beautiful parts to it. He was looking in the corner, and I believe Jesus was there, like taking him to heaven, and he was in such peace. But all of that to say, I was left a widow at age 41 with 3 teenagers, well, almost teenagers. I had 12, 14, and 15. And although we were prepared and they knew this was coming, there's nothing to prepare you for what it's like to be widowed. I didn't have any friends, well, a few, but very rare to find friends who would understand what I was going through. The church was the loneliest place because all I saw were couples and families and young singles groups. And it's like, where do I fit in now? And that's very common from all the widows that I talked to. And, so I was just in this very dark, dark place. Like, you explain it like you feel like anything you've ever been looking forward to is gone, poof, in an instant. And it's hard to find anything good. But slowly, there started to be healing in my heart. And that came from praying, like laying on the floor, listening to worship music, crying and saying, "God, meet me here. Like, I'm so broken." And I felt Jesus in a way that I've never felt before, like closer than ever. Like, he loves widows so much and he loves all of us, but he really came into the piece of my brokenhearted, and he started to put people in my path and experiences in my path. I got to go to a grief retreat during COVID, which is unheard of, but they decided to do it anyways, where I was able to really get a lot of healing. I started grief counseling. I did everything I could in order to move forward. And God started healing me just a little bit every day. I like to explain, like in grief, in the beginning, it's like dark clouds and stormy every day. And then one day you might see a little break of sun. And then every day you get a little bit more sun until, where I'm at now, I'm 5.5 years down the road and it's sunny almost every day, but I'll still have some of those hard days when I miss my husband. But that's a little bit about, what brought me to where I am today. And as God started to heal me, I wanted to give back. I saw that he took my mourning and turned it to dancing, and he made beauty from ashes. And so that's what I want to do now, is help other people, because it is the loneliest, darkest place that I've ever been. Even though I had great friends and family, I did have a great church family, but nobody knew how to help me. And one of the things that has propelled my ministry is I looked high and low in all the churches in the area. And I live in a pretty big area, and there was no widow groups, no widow support, nothing at my church, nothing at any church in the area. I later learned that God mentions widows 103 times in the Bible, but yet so few churches have anything. And I don't know why exactly, but I just knew I wanted to solve the problem. And so I started my own nonprofit about 4, and decided to just get people together. So it's not within the church, but it's just anybody in the area. I invite them. We get together the third Monday of every month. And then I began to grow that. And now we're in 30 cities. I taught other widows how to do the same thing. And my passion now is getting really education into churches about how do you help the widows? What do you do? And I actually created a book and a workbook and a program that I'm working on, getting churches to look at implementing in their church, because there's so few help for us. There's so many great programs, Celebrate Recovery, Divorce Care, Grief Share, all great programs, but not specific to widows. And so that's a little bit about my passion. I started a podcast for widows because I wanted to connect with widows all over the world. And so, that's my mission today. I'm able to do this full time and really help get some education into churches and hopefully turn this around, because I know that God loves and defends widows. He says he's a defender of widows and a father to the fatherless. I remember the day that I read that verse as a widow, and I was like, that's me and my kids. Like, this is amazing. Like, God really loves us. So I'm just trying to help support widows and also teach churches on how to support their widows. So I guess that's a little bit about me.
Can I just say, I'm just so grateful. Every time I read those scriptures, it breaks my heart. I want to do something. but I look around, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? I've never, I haven't really been in a situation where I've met, widows and orphans and all that kind of stuff as scripture talks about. But I do know people that have gone through it. We get letters all the time from viewers who just lost their spouse of like 50 some years or whatever the case, early or even later on in life. And they're just grieving. And one of the questions I want to ask you, how do we support people that have lost someone, like, without saying the wrong thing, because I think we're not educated. Like you said, no one's educating people or, in the churches even on what to do, how to approach, what to say, how to give comfort, how do we do that? How do we support someone who's grieving?
Well, you need to be there, not just in the beginning. The hardest part is about 2 to 3 months after we lose our spouses, because that's when everybody disappears. So I tell people to put it in their calendar, the date that your friend or your family member lost their spouse, because you're not going to remember it, and be there for them a year later. Be the person to reach out and say, I remember this day. In addition, visit them like 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road. And there are a lot of things that people say that are maybe intellectually true, but not emotionally helpful. For example, one of the worst things you can say is at least. Anything that starts with at least you had this many years, at least you were young. I mean, I actually have a whole chapter in my book about this, about what not to say and what to say. And that's a big one, because it diminishes the griever, what they're going through. And here's another one is, I understand. Anything that starts with I understand. I understand. This is the worst one that widows don't like. I understand I'm divorced, which I know that is a hard thing, but it's not the same. The best thing you can do is say, I don't understand, but I'm here to listen, and just be quiet. And let them talk. And then another thing not to do is say, let me know if you ever need anything. Okay, the griever doesn't know what they need. So the best thing you can do as a friend or a family of someone who's lost someone is just tell them what you're going to do. I'm going to come over and bring you a meal. I'm going to take your kids. I'm going to do this, and they love that, because we don't know what we want, but when someone steps up, like I had a whole group of girls, like, we're going to come clean your house. I'm like, okay, we're going to take your kids. That was so helpful in order to really feel loved and supported. But I'm telling you, I work with thousands of widows with my online communities, and the biggest thing they feel is alone. They feel so alone. Some of them even turn away from the church because they're not getting support. And so what I really want is for churches to have some kind of program where in the very beginning, yes, you visit them, but also have something where 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, you have someone checking in with them throughout the whole year. So it's not, just this thing and not a one-time thing, and that you continue. Some people say, for me, it wasn't, but some people say the second year is the hardest. And so, being there for all of those big days. And, something that I just, created was this system. So I created a book called Widow Goals: Steps to Finding Peace When You Lose Your Spouse. And every single chapter is a goal, and it's enveloped in scripture. And it's things like get out of bed. That's the first goal, because a lot of times that's hard. Have an eternal perspective. Learn how to solo parent, which is actually a lot different than single parenting. We don't have another person to send our kids to, and there's so many different chapters. One of the biggest things that helped me, and people tell me that helps them, is there's a chapter called Know That You Are Chosen. And when I went to a grief retreat, I felt like God gave me this vision, and that he spoke to me and said, before I went to the retreat, it was 2 months after Luke died. I'm like, am I being punished? Like, why did my husband die? But in this vision, God placed a crown upon my head and said, I am proud of you. Out of all the people in the world, I chose you to be Luke's wife and walk by his side. And it's a privilege. And in that moment, everything shifted for me. I'm like, wow, I am so blessed that I got to be his wife. And so in my book, people tell, and I've also done podcast episodes about this, that is the thing that changed everything for them when they realized, whoa, it was a privilege to walk by my spouse's side, and I'm glad I got to do it. And so that's one of the big things that I like to share. Anyways, I'm kind of getting away from where we were at. But the book is really something to help people dive deeper. And then I created a workbook, and now I created a leader's guide. So anyone, now, the best person to do it would be widowed, but if you have no one widowed in your church to step up, any volunteer could lead this group. There's a book that tells you exactly what to do. And so I'm really working to get that into churches, or get something, if they don't want to do that, just have some kind of widows ministry, show
Yeah.
up and let them know they're loved and they're cared for, because I think it's so horrible that so many widows decide not to go to church anymore because they just feel so out of place, and that no one's reaching out to them, and people are awkward around them. They don't know what to say.
Right.
Anyways, I
Alan?
get a little passionate about this.
No,
so
I love it.
Let you speak.
Alan, go ahead.
Well, you're right about one thing. Until you've experienced the loss of a loved one, or your spouse particularly, you don't understand grief. I mean, I was a pastor and dealt with people who had lost their loved ones. But when I lost my wife, that grief, you never have felt anything like that before in your life. And you've never experienced that before. In fact, I even went back and apologized to some of my friends that lost their spouses and said, I am so sorry. I didn't even realize what you went through. I mean, you go to the funeral, you buy them flowers, or you buy them a card or whatever. You say, I'm sorry, and let me know if you need anything, and you leave.
Yep.
You have no idea what that grief is until you've actually experienced it. So I understand that a lot. The interesting thing that you're talking about widows, and I agree with you. There is, of course, in 1 Timothy chapter 5, great passage of scripture about widows and the instruction of a family, and how family is supposed to come in and take care of widows, especially even before the church. In other words, families are responsible for the widows in their family, and particularly older widows, obviously, but still that. What I find and what I found was there's very little support for widowers.
Yes.
In fact, where there's grief meetings together, it's a lot of women and hardly any men, right? And so
Yes.
Yeah, good
that's an interesting scenario as well. But I agree with you full-heartedly, is that it's an experience that until you've gone through it, you don't really understand it.
Yes. Yes. And I want to clarify, when I just do it so often, I forget to explain it. When I say widows, I also mean widowers. A lot of widowers have also gone through my book and as well listen to my podcast. So I try to, provide support to them as well. But yes, they get a lot less support than widows. There's a great group called Refugee Widowers, and they do retreats and all kinds of things. And I know they offer support, but they're one of the few groups. And I get that a lot I have a widows group with widowers as well, but they're like, we don't get near as much support. And a lot of times it's because men, they don't want to talk about their feelings. And so they don't want to go to these groups and talk about it and all that. But it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Here's some truth about grief. You have to go through it. You can't go under it, can't go over it, can't go around it. You have to go through it. It's the only way to get to the other side. And what I always tell people is feel it, because what we feel, God can heal. If we don't feel it, he can't heal it. I mean, he can do anything, but he's going to heal it as we feel it. And so I always recommend that people feel, the grief and go through it. But yes, I wish there was more support for widowers as well.
Let me ask you this. Do sometimes people that are widow feel guilty moving on, as time goes on? Do they have this guilt of, because you forget, you start to forget you're the one you loved, and you're starting to get interest. Maybe you're at an age where you start getting interested in other people, maybe thinking about marriage again. Is there grief in that? And what do you say to people that feel, guilt? Is there guilt in that? And what do you say to people that feel that guilt?
Yes. So I personally am remarried. I got married 2.5 years ago. And there's a lot of that, not just for myself, but people who start. So we'll talk about the dating part first. Start dating, because I was with my husband 17 years. So it feels very strange in the beginning to be with another man and to get to know him and, all of that stuff. But, it came down to, he would want me to be happy. He wouldn't want me to be stuck in this place, and God would want me to be happy. He doesn't want me to just survive, but to thrive. And in all of life, like there's that part where you when you start laughing again a few months after, whenever it is, there, I remember there was guilt. Like, I can't laugh. My husband's dead. You know, so many people go through this. But what we have to realize is that God came, Jesus says he came to give us life and life abundantly, John 10:10. And so we cannot just sit here and like a lot of widows, not a lot, there's some that I have seen in my community that say, I'm just waiting to die so I can join him. And I'm like, no, that's not what God has planned for you. You're still here. If you still have breath, God still has a purpose for you, you know? And so it's something where we need to, you know, just continue to do that.
What do you say?
Live.
Yeah. What do you say to someone that just lost a loved one? Because I know it's happening a lot. I don't know if it's just my age and I'm hearing about it a lot, or if something's happening, you know, in the world and a lot of people are passing on. What do you say to someone that's just going through it right now and they are just devastated?
Mm-hmm. That kind of comes back to, you know, our conversation earlier that it don't say any of those things that people get. They're just like trying to say something, so they say the wrong thing, you know, just again, be very direct. Like, I'm going to bring you a meal and I don't know what to say, but I'm here to listen and I'm praying for you. Sometimes it's the simplest things that help. It's so much more than the people who are saying all the wrong things, you know, just being there and then have your actions support your words. Don't just be there when it first happens. That's where we have hundreds of people around us. We need the support months later. Check in with people months later. You know, how are you doing? Contact them. Holidays. You definitely, first of all, want to make sure that they have a place to go. If these are widows in your church, make sure they have somewhere to go for Thanksgiving, somewhere to go for Christmas. Check in on them on those days because, oh my goodness, the first year going through holidays without your significant other, it's so difficult. And so, you know, make sure that they have you know, a place to go and that they're feeling loved and supported. And it's going to mean even just a little text means so much to people. So I started something where I collect emails from widows and I collect their anniversary date, because that's a really hard one, the date that their spouse died and their birthday, because those are all really difficult dates without your spouse. And I send them an email. It's an automated system, but I record a video, I pray over them and I send it to them on those days. And I have gotten like the best emails of people, how much they're like, nobody else remembered. Thank you so much. This means so much to me. And I just remember being shocked the first year of the 1-year anniversary of his death that none of my friends remembered. My family did. We had a little celebration and got together, not really celebration, but just being together. And I was so surprised that nobody remembered. And then year 2, no, even some of my family forgot. Now 5 years down and I'm remarried. They think I don't need to remember, but it's still very important. And so like really just getting it in your calendar on like ask them in the beginning, like, what are these dates? They might not know why you're asking them then. You can tell them, you know, I want to remember these. I want to support you and get those dates, those 3 dates, their birthday, because they're going to feel very, very, very sad on their birthday, probably the first year, their anniversary with their late spouse and the date that their spouse passed, because those are going to be hard. There's also hard other ones, especially for women, Mother's Day, men, Father's Day. You know, there's a lot of, because it's usually, especially if you're younger, it's usually your spouse who did all of that, not your kids because they're too little. So yeah, I would just say make it a point to be there after everything stops, after the last casserole has come, after the last card has come, like be there. Because I remember 3 or 4 months down the road just feeling so alone, even though I had great friends and family, you know, and my family was always there, but friends definitely forgot. So that's a little bit of my advice.
What about people that you're speaking to them? I just lost my spouse. They're grieving. Do they get rid of the clothes? You know what I mean? Like what their first few months of they just lost their spouse. What did they do? How, you know, do you have some tips for them on how to process through the grief? What do they need to do? Because I'm sure they've got a lot going on, especially with finances and all that.
Yes. So I would say write down every day, and they might not be ready in the first few weeks, but then start writing down 3 things that you're thankful for during the day. because it really does shift your perspective when you start looking at, okay, instead of everything that's wrong, because that's all we see in the beginning, it's just all of the things that have changed, is look for the good. If you can't do three, just start with one. Just start writing down things, and your brain is going to start seeing those things as you start looking for them. The close, that's different for every single person. I have a chapter in my book about that. And some people do it right away, some wait years, some never do it. It's completely, there's no wrong way. Like, it's all okay. It's whatever you personally want. And here's another big thing. So a lot of people think there are stages of grief. That's not actually correct. So Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she created the stages of grief for those dying, not for those mourning. So it kind of got switched over time. And so grief actually comes in waves, not stages. And so what that did for me a few months into my journey, when I learned that, I had relief. Oh, I'm not going through bargaining and denial. And because I used to think, what's wrong with me? I'm not going through all these things. But I learned that that's not actually something we have to all go through. Now, some of them may be true, but they're created for the people dying. And so that was helpful. I would say finding something good to look forward to. That was always like, okay, what's my one thing this week? And I would usually make a coffee date with a friend or go on a walk or do something, like kind of just start looking for what's something I'm looking forward to. And then definitely seek counseling. I mean, I've had the same amazing Christian woman counselor for 15 years. And she actually made a house call on the day after Luke died, came over to my house to talk to me. But seeking counseling, grief books, grief programs, and really diving into your healing like it's your job, because in the beginning it is. Healing is your job. We can, help others around me, but we've got to put on our oxygen mask before we help those around you. And most of the people I speak to still have kids at home, and we can't be the best mom or dad we need to be if we're not taking care of ourselves. So finding the way, my counselor used to ask me every week, how are you taking care of you? And so I had to be prepared to tell her, okay, this is what I'm doing for me this week. So yeah, that's a few of the things that they could be doing.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate having you on the show. The book is called Widow Goals. Is that correct? And where can they find it?
It's on Amazon. And if they want to know more about the program I talked about, it's widowgoals.org/support program.
All right.
And that will tell them all about the program I talked about.
Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
We're giving away a free booklet called Living in Truth. It's a devotional study on 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 1 and 2. Pastor Allen brings out the gold on those two verses. You can get it absolutely free. Go to our website, gotalktruth.com/resources. Click on resources, fill out the form. We'll send one to you in the mail absolutely free. If you want to help support our mission, keep this conversation in truth on the air, we are viewer supported. We don't take government funds. It's just because of the generosity of those that watch this show, we can continue to broadcast and share the message of truth and God's love. If you'd like to do it online, you can. gotalktruth.com/donate. Many different ways to give digitally that way. If you want to do it through the mail, you can. You can make your gift payable to Talk Truth and send it to 246 Stewart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H 3C8. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.